Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Where's the Line, where we explore the great areas of life. My name is Sabrina, and I'm joined by Jane. Jane, what's going on? How are you?
I'm good. Things are very busy. I know before our call, we got to connect really quickly, but it just sounds like we're very much in the fiscal year now, and let's just say you and I are very much overachievers. So sometimes going above and beyond means that we're doing more work than usual. So I'm very much in that
Mhm.
place right now. I'm trying my best to find balance, both work-life balance and even just within work. I'm trying to find my boundaries, say no, learn to prioritize and continue to reprioritize, but not my best, skill set. I'm very much a yes girl. So I'm working on it, but things are just kind of busy right now. How are you, Sabrina?
Yeah, you and I somehow something is in the air, but things are very busy. Can barely keep my head above water, but here we are. Um, I try to prioritize some self-care in between. I actually got a lymph drainage massage for the first time.
Ooh,
That
okay,
was a
very
cool
cool.
experience. Yeah, it was actually. I mean, I was definitely falling for these influencer posts that they were like swearing by it. And now that I live in California, I thought I'll check it out. So, but yeah, I felt much lighter afterwards. And it just, I mean, I don't know how much of this is actually true and effective. And it probably depends on the frequency that you go, but I really enjoyed it. So it was money well spent, in my opinion. But I'm excited for today's conversation because we have a very special guest on. And so, for those listeners that recall, we recorded an episode with a dietitian about sort of gut health. And our season four, we're really excited that Jane and I are bringing to you all actual experts and specialists that work in those fields. And so, today we're going to debunk and get really granular in terms of supplements. And think supplements, it's such an umbrella term, right? And so much falls into that. And there's so
Mhm.
much misinformation out there, right? So today, very excited. We thought it would be beneficial again to hear from an expert about this and debunk some of the pros, the cons, the myths, and the effectiveness. And so please join me in welcoming Laura Gearman to Where is the Line? So Laura
Welcome.
is an yeah, welcome.
Thank you so much for
Laura,
having me.
yeah, we're excited you're here, Laura. So I did a little bit of LinkedIn stalking, and so your profile saying you are an experienced healthcare manager and clinical dietitian with a demonstrated history of achievement in university-associated teaching institutions. So you're currently a clinical nutrition manager for Sodexo, but you also did a lot of work for the U of M. Sorry, I should clarify. University of Minnesota, woohoo, providing clinical nutrition care to patients in the pediatric cardiovascular intensive care unit. Wow, quite the mouthful. So I'm so pumped to have you on to talk more about supplements. And just before we go and let Laura introduce herself, a quick disclaimer for our audience, right? Like the information today is provided for education and not necessarily intended for a pure diagnose, treat, or cure. And so if you're looking for specific medical advice, you should always consult with your medical provider first. So with that, yeah, Laura, welcome. Please introduce yourself to our audience.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a great introduction. I have worked at the University of Minnesota Masonic Children's Hospital for the last 14 years now. Been a dietitian a little bit longer than that, but we don't want to talk about how old we really are, so we'll just say a little bit longer than that. I love working with kids, so it's really fun to work in a pediatric hospital environment. We have a great team there, and I get to work with a whole bunch of different people across the healthcare spectrum. So lots of different healthcare practitioners as well as some management people in that part of my role. We do a lot of work with supplements in our kids, which is a little bit different than in adults, but definitely have experience of doing that all through my time there.
Amazing. Yeah, we're looking forward to hearing more. Um, so to kick us off here, so I had a doctor once tell me because with all of this information, right, you can go to so many different sources, and so he mentioned that um, almost like the Pareto principle, right? That 80% of your actions should follow 20% of the information that you find. And so that was sort of told to me, but it's really hard to resist all of this other information that's out there. So I guess to start off, let's start with like, what do you think that people in general are paying too much attention to when it comes to our health? And what do you think we're not paying enough attention to?
A great question. So, Sabrina, you're talking about, influence to get the massage. Like, there are so many influencers out there who I think really influence all aspects of our lives. Like, oh, they're taking that supplement. I should take that supplement. Oh, they're following this new diet. Oh, that person's doing Whole30. I should try Whole30. There's so much
Mm,
more out there than even just a few years ago when it was like, oh, maybe you saw an ad or like you talked to someone who was doing this. But now we have all of these influencers who are pushing all of these different things. Um, so I think we see a lot of that, just like, hey, I heard about this. Like one thing you never do as a dietitian is tell anyone you're a dietitian in a social setting because it's immediately going to be like, oh, what do you think about the keto diet? What do you
Yeah.
think about this or that? Because there are so many different things out there. And so I think we're paying a lot of attention to what other people are doing and maybe not what might be best for us. Maybe not paying enough attention to, like getting down to the things that aren't like trendy or cool, which is just eating well and exercising and taking care of ourselves. Like
Mhm.
there's no influencers pushing that. So I think that's part of the problem is there's just so much information out there. It's so overwhelming to sift through what's true and what's not.
It is so true because I feel like every other day there's something new being pushed to me. And I think, I mean, I recognize that things have gotten better where like the influencers are using, hashtag sponsored or hashtag ad to help, you know, people to make an educated reaction. But I think the problem is like to see that you still feel like, oh, maybe I should. And I know for a fact I've fallen for that. And I know we joked about like, oh, falling for the Whole30 and all these different diets. I'm guilty of it. So I'll just put that out there immediately. But Laura, one question we had is there's there's a lot of tests right out there that can help us understand like how we are doing and where maybe we need additional help from things like supplements. And I know when Sabrina and I when we were doing research, there's also like the DEXA scan and there are things that are recommended, but maybe your doctor wouldn't recommend until a certain age. And so I guess a question for you is just generically, what are some tests people should be doing annually? And I guess maybe beyond like the regular physical, annual physical, and what then would become too much for certain people who are really obsessed with it?
Yeah, that's a great question. Honestly, go to your annual physical. If you're of age to get your cholesterol checked, you should do that. If you live in a northern area where you don't get a lot of sun year round for vitamin D, you should probably get that checked.
Mm,
Um, Other than that, I don't know unless you have a specific medical condition, a family history of certain things, a history of any sort of disease. Like, there's probably really nothing else that you need to get checked annually if you don't have any huge risk factors, if you're an average healthy person.
mhm.
Um, there's a huge trend in taking these send away like food sensitivity tests.
Yeah.
Um, I was just talking with one of my kids' friends' moms this weekend, and she's like, "We both took it, we sent it in." And I was like, "Oh no." I'm like, "Well, it's gonna come back and it's gonna say you can't eat anything." And that's actually not true. So some of these tests create this hysteria over like, "Oh, I can't have gluten or corn or soy," or and I'm like, "Well, so these aren't true allergies. These are maybe sensitivities. These aren't the normal food allergies that we think of, like IgE. You're going to have an allergic reaction that could be life threatening. These are like IgG sensitivities, which is very different. So, a lot of these things that we are out there that we've created that different companies use may provide people with some bit of okay, I maybe should avoid all of that, but also like keeping track of what you eat and when you don't feel well with a whatever way that works for you, a pen and paper, or, getting super
Mhm.
simple, or just tracking in an app and saying, like, oh, well, I didn't feel well that day. And what did I eat? Let's see if I can find any patterns. Significantly more successful in doing that than kind of subscribing to one of these tests that is probably going to tell you you can't eat a whole bunch of things that you probably should be including in your diet.
Yeah. Uh, It's so true. And I feel like a lot of it ends up being this like fear mongering of like, oh my gosh, all of a sudden I cannot do all these different things. And then it becomes a very restrictive lifestyle. And yeah, it turns into a whole thing. I know for a fact that supplement is such a huge industry. And like a lot of it is about money, right? Like yes, some of it is health, but a lot of it is also marketing and it's ultimately business. So kind of curious what Laura's perspective on this is because, and maybe even before we get into that, Sabrina, I'm kind of curious, what supplements are you taking on a daily basis? Maybe we've already
Yes,
fallen for these marketing campaigns.
I'm pretty sure we have. I would hazard a guess, but yeah, I mean, I've definitely changed this. I went really overboard like a year ago, and now I've sort of condensed it. But the ones I'm taking every day is colostrum,
Okay.
and I'm taking magnesium, um, and then here and there vitamin D. Yes.
Okay.
So I used to take like fish oil, vitamin B, zinc, but the fish oil tablets, oh my God, I like almost choked on them. They're too big. I can't. So I stopped those. Yeah, so magnesium, colostrum, and vitamin D. Because Laura's point used to live in Minnesota, and we don't get a lot of sun there. So, what about you,
Mhm.
Jane?
Okay, well, for context, I live in Chicago. Um, I think I'm not very religious with my vitamin D. I know I'm supposed to take that. My doctor did tell me to do that, so that's my bad. I actually was doing research, and I did recently get into magnesium glycinate specifically. Very much a TikTok trend. So I'm curious. We're gonna get into a rapid fire later. So I'm curious if that's one of the ones that it's like truly just a trend or actually helpful. And then, okay, I'm very tempted right now because every influencer is talking about AG1, like the greens and the
Mm.
that type of stuff. And then also, funny enough, I'm not currently taking this, but I do one day want to start a family. And so, and at the age that we are at, a lot of the influencers that we follow are like, whether it's new moms or moms who or women who are thinking of becoming moms. And so I get these prenatal ads a- and I'm like, oh my gosh, maybe I do actually have to take it if I am wanting to try at a certain time in my life. And anyway, so actively vitamin D and magnesium glycinate, but I am heavily influenced into all these other things. So, anyways, with that said, Laura, it's time to tell us, have we been influenced into the marketing or like what are some basics, like things that people really should be taking versus just the marketing or business side?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I attended grad school at Tufts University Friedman School of Nutrition Science and Policy. So, I had a unique experience and I got to learn about all the policy, like nerdy things that happen on the backside of nutrition. So, just generally might be where you lose people in a conversation when you start talking about the FDA. Their eyes kind of like glaze over a little bit, like, lady, I don't know what you're talking about. But I think it's important to know how supplements kind of came to be. It wasn't that long ago, 1994. Well, maybe that was a long time ago, but to me, that seems not that long ago. Um, there was a Dietary Health and Education Act that kind of replaced the previous Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act that supplements were under. So it really changed the FDA's ability to regulate supplements, making them essentially not regulating supplements. So they're not regulated for safety, effectiveness, or actual ingredients. So they don't
Wow.
have to be regulated before they go to market. They don't have to be tested. They can just go to market lawfully without even notification to the FDA. So since that time, the number of dietary supplements is at least 20 times higher than it was before that time because the barriers were removed to kind of push
Mhm.
those things forward. So as we've seen, you can see some pretty wild claims on actual supplements. Like this is going to, cure everything in the world. The FDA does have some guidelines as to what you can actually say in terms of the supplements. So you can use these structure function claims to say, like, this might help with things. It could have like a general well being claim, might make you feel better, have more energy. But it can't say this is going to treat your specific ailment here. Like it's not going to say this can treat cancer or this can treat migraines. It can kind of have more general statements. So I think that's something to be aware of, first of all. If you see a supplement that says it's going to treat a specific disease, you should absolutely not take that one, because they probably haven't done their due diligence. And then the other thing we worry about in supplements, because it is such a big market and we know people make a lot of money, is what is there actually in there? What is supposed to be in there? And what else might have ended up in there? Um,
Mhm.
so I think third-party tested supplements are hugely important. It takes more money for the companies to have a third party test their supplements to make sure purity and quality, but in that testing process, 20 to 25% of supplements do have undisclosed ingredients in them.
Wow.
So that's something to be careful of. You don't want to, you want to know what you're putting in your body. And some of those can be, we're talking about athletes, elite athletes, they can be banned substances. So sometimes athletes are taking supplements that they don't think have banned substances in them, but they do. And then that's how they get disqualified from events. So just some of those things is kind of what really brings that to light. Like you don't think about it. And then you might hear about, well, why were they taking that banned substance? Well, they might not have been on purpose. It just might have been
Mhm.
in a supplement that they're taking. So you have to think about what kind of claims they're making and is their goal really to make money? Is their goal to help health? What is the goal of that company? Because it's a huge industry, like billions of dollars
Yeah.
are made in the supplement industry.
It's crazy. I mean, even as I think about just going to the grocery store, right, or places like, Costco, there's entire aisles of just supplements. That's it. And even if I'm like looking for a particular one, there are so many brands that sell the exact same thing. And I feel like I like to pay attention, right? Like I recognize none of us want to intentionally consume bad things, but most of us are not very educated at all as to what to look for. Most of us just look for a brand that maybe we recognize and like quote
Mhm.
unquote trust, right? But I don't feel equipped enough to be reading the label and then understanding exactly what goes into it. And it's crazy because as you're speaking, like just the lack of regulation and the fact that it's not only what they put in intentionally for that particular supplement, but also what else is going in. Like I did not even think about the other types
Um,
of consequences that are coming in with buying a certain type. But um, I know earlier we talked about a rapid fire. I know for a fact this is very valuable for me. So maybe I'll kick it off and then Sabrina, I'll pass it on to you to a couple
mhm.
for a couple that I know you are interested in. But Laura, this is what we're going to do. We're going to read through just a couple common ones, and you will let us know for each one, are they necessary? Let's just say for the average, generally healthy person, and their effectiveness, or it kind of depends. So let us know your perspective. So, okay, vitamins. This could be vitamin B, C, D, the common ones. What's your perspective?
Like just a true multivitamin, I
Yeah,
think.
multivitamin for women or men, those
Mhm.
Yeah,
kind.
probably not necessary unless due to some circumstances you have to avoid entire food groups. Like if you have,
Okay.
celiac disease and you're avoiding gluten, you might
Oh, okay.
wanna take a multivitamin to cover your bases or other, other things that you might limit your intakes. But for the average person, this is what I always tell people. If you're worried that you might need a multivitamin, you probably don't. If you don't think you need one, you probably do. So I think that's probably where it lies. Like I don't take one. Um, I just try to get all those nutrients from food.
Okay.
That's fascinating. I love
That
it.
is fascinating. Actually, my doctor did tell me that because I asked him, I said, should I be taking a multivitamin? And he was like, no, the average American is consuming plenty of everything. It's not like you're deprived of food. So, okay, great.
Yep.
Fish oil. What are your thoughts?
So I think can be beneficial for sure if you have a family history of heart disease. If you are really concerned about reducing inflammation, there's some research on improved like muscle soreness for athletes.
Okay.
Recovery is improved. It's one of those that's hard to get in high doses from real food. Like you would have to eat a lot of salmon in order to get the
Mhm.
Mm.
doses that are in the supplements. So maybe I dabbled for a while, but I couldn't get over the fishy. Like even the really purified ones, like it just burp fish, and nobody likes that. That just doesn't taste good. So maybe if you had risk factors, might be worth it. The average person like eat fish a few times a week.
Okay.
Mm.
All right. And Sabrina, is that the one that you almost died on, essentially?
Because I was listening to a personal trainer that I was dating who swore by the fish oil capsules. I mean, he was a fine guy, but yeah, but the same as Laura mentioned, like the burping is too much and the choking. So
Yep.
All
eat your
right, got
fish,
it.
people. Eat your fish a few times a week. You're fine.
Yep.
Okay, this one, I don't want to mispronounce it. Is it creatine?
Yep.
Okay, what are your thoughts?
So I have people ask me about this all the time because I have people that I like work adjacent to, and they're like, my teenager wants to take creatine for like performance. And so I actually really dug into this one a few months ago. And I think young people, it's sort of like probably safe in the normal doses, not excessive doses. But is it actually effective? Like TBD. I don't know. There's definitely literature that shows in like young adult athletes, it's really good for muscle recovery, for that kind of like power explosive movement. The average person is not like looking for power and explosiveness in your daily life, right? Like you know, we're not like college football players like about to go out
Mm.
there and do some explosive movement. So if you're really looking to maximize strength gains and build muscle, maybe. Now, the latest trend, though, is definitely like perimenopausal and postmenopausal women taking creatine for a whole host of reasons. One is to help with like muscle, keeping muscle. Basically, we know as women, our muscle starts to decline around our mid 30s. So you
Mhm.
really need to work on anything you can to keep that muscle mass. Um, some women are using it in that stage of life. I think I have a friend who's actually currently doing it, and her main complaint is just like she feels like her muscles are swollen. So one of the known side effects is you can hold on to more water and actually gain just some water weight. And she said she just feels odd, like her muscles are swollen, but she's gonna stick it out for 2 months and see how things go. Um,
Mhm.
there's some emerging evidence that it might help with like inflammation, oxidative stress, reducing some of that, as well as the muscle integrity. And then also some stuff around cognition, sleep, and mood. Not a
Mm.
lot of like literature that I would put, my stamp on of approval, but that's being researched. So potential benefits. So I think it'll be interesting to see where that goes with peri and postmenopausal women and not just used for young athletes. But I have to like laugh every time because I'm like, okay, I have these like teenagers wanting to take it and then my like perimenopausal friends. And that's just a very different situation, but same supplement. What are we
So
doing?
you're saying I should not be taking my creatine in preparation to start my day so I can get to the red line really fast.
Right. I mean,
I
if you
mean,
want to sprint for like 10 yards or something, maybe.
oh my gosh. Okay, great, great, great. Okay, very helpful.
Mhm.
Magnesium. And okay, I'm curious because I did learn that there are multiple types of magnesium. Some are for like more regular bowel movements, some are for like mood and sleep. And so, yeah, tell us about that.
Yep. So generally safe. Magnesium is one of those that if you would take too much, your kidneys are super smart and they'll just get rid of the extra.
Mm.
So it's not like it would be hard, not impossible, but hard to end up with a magnesium toxicity. So I think that's always something that we think about too, like what too much.
Mhm.
Um, and then you also really notice symptoms if you're taking too much. Like it can help with regular bowel movement, so you can go too far the other way, and can really have like stomach upset and other GI issues if taking too much. One thing about magnesium is you do need B vitamins in order to absorb into your cells. B vitamins
Mhm.
are in so much of our food in terms of like any grain type food, a lot of fruits and vegetables. You can get B vitamins from certain ones, meat. So it's usually not a concern, but if you're for some reason not flush in the B vitamins, you might consider taking a B vitamin supplement along with it just to make sure you're maximizing your effectiveness. But I think there's not a ton of like really well done studies on the sleep. And I know some people will do it for like muscle to avoid
Mhm.
cramping and other things. And I think people
Mhm.
find anecdotally that it really works for them. And
Mhm.
that's part of what I think is, with influencers and even friends, like what's going to work for Jane is not necessarily going to work for me.
Mhm.
And so I think trying things and finding out this does actually make a difference for me or it doesn't, and that can really help guide you in what might be right for you.
Is there any evidence for magnesium glycinate to help address anxiety?
I saw a little bit of that because I had seen a paper like flash around recently about magnesium and mood, and I was like, oh, I don't know that much about that. So I was kind of looking into that, and I think that is some of the emerging um, research that's happening too. Is just kind of looking at magnesium with mood disorders.
Mhm.
So, but really, probably every single one of these vitamins have been looked at related to mood disorder. So is it that
Mhm.
we're just like trying to find any possible supplement that might help? Potentially, but it would be interesting to kind of follow some of that. The thing that's really hard about nutrients is we can never like really test them in a silo, right? Like we
Mhm.
eat food,
Mhm.
and unless we were going to have a study where everybody ate the exact same amount of the exact same foods every single day for an extended period of time, and all we did was add in magnesium, we can't really know. Is it the effect
Yeah.
of that? Is it the combo of this with that? So I think that's something that's tricky to manage.
Yeah. Fair. All right, Sabrina, all you.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm just so grateful. Thanks for this crash course. So good to have you share your perspectives. What about probiotics? So obviously, I mean, from my perspective, it's very much like for gut health and inflammation. But could you break that down and how I've seen this like probiotic tablet on the shelf, but like what how effective is that, and do we even need that?
Great question. There are so many different strains of probiotics, and that's where you can really get in the weeds of like which strain do I need? And it's pretty
Mm,
difficult to assess like which strain is needed to support which kind of health claims. I think overall the research on probiotics is positive. Like we want to have a healthy gut that'll help our immune system, help keep us regular, all of those things. I think you probably achieve that without taking an actual supplement and just eating foods with probiotics. Like yogurt's a great source, kombucha,
mm,
any fermented foods. They really have a good amount of probiotics in them and a pretty diverse amount of the different kinds. If you take the tablets, they literally have billions of little probiotics in there, which is fine, but you don't know which ones your body actually needs. So
mm,
eating some of those maybe fermented foods, yogurt, uh, kombucha. But that is
mhm.
something my husband and I both like regularly drink kombucha, and when we are on it, like we feel so much better just
Mm.
overall.
Oh.
So I don't, but again, that could be just us.
I'll
We
try that. I like kombucha, and Jane loves
Mhm.
her Activia yogurt, so
Yeah.
keep up with
I'm so
that.
embarrassed. I was just gonna bring back my Activia again. The last time we had like a professional, we were talking about diet, and I was like, I love my Activia. So, anyways, our listeners, again, feel free to buy your Activia, and Activia, feel free to sponsor us because we love you.
Yes.
What about zinc?
Yeah. So a lot of people will load on zinc during cold and flu season, thinking they're gonna like stave
Mm,
off colds. And there's mixed literature on that. I think the main is it's probably not gonna help overall with your symptoms, but it may decrease your duration. But that's if you like truly take the zinc lozenges every, I don't know, what is it, like 2 to 3 hours all day long. Which one of the side effects of zinc can be like an upset stomach, things moving too fast through the GI tract. So it can have side effects that maybe you don't want to have. Maybe just having the cold for another 2 days might be more tolerable than feeling like that for
Mm.
3 days. Um, but I think, again, more room to like study these things and see if there's another way to have the same effects from taking zinc, or is there something you could like mix with the zinc to not have those side effects? But also, who's going
Mhm.
to set their alarm for every 2 to 3 hours to take the zinc to decrease the
Yeah,
duration of the cold?
that makes sense. Okay, this next one is near and dear to my heart because apparently I take it every day. So colostrum. I feel like I haven't heard about colostrum since just the beginning of this year. I don't know if this is a new fad or a trend that's gonna last. Laura, help us.
Great question. I feel like the same. I just more recently heard about it and I was like, interesting. And then I was like, but like colostrum from what? So like any mammal after giving birth
Mm.
has colostrum. So I didn't know like, but what animal is this from? And it's, I think most of the stuff marketed is from cows. So it's mostly dairy colostrum. So that's something to think about. If you don't do, it does definitely have milk protein and lactose in it. So like if you avoid milk for any reason, if you avoid lactose, definitely would be something that you would want to avoid. Um,
Mhm.
do you take it as a, I saw there's powder and actual liquid. Do you take it as a powder or capsule?
Yeah, powder.
Yeah. So I mean, I think there's, we know it's super good for babies, right? Like it helps build their immune system. It has those immunoglobulins. Um,
Mhm.
I think the other claims are that it can help aid in muscle recovery, just overall immune function.
Okay.
There's, because it seems so new and like hot on the market, not a lot of research to support that as a supplement for like humans taking cow colostrum. Tons of research
Mm.
on babies drinking mom's colostrum and the benefits of that. Um, so I think that will be one to watch and see.
Yeah, well, I'll report back in a month how I do after consistently taking this. But yeah, no, thank you for the fair, that's a very fair perspective. We don't have enough, yeah,
Yes.
information.
Thank you for
Okay.
that. All right. Well, now that we've gone through some of the more common ones through our rapid fire, Laura, help us understand, like a lot of people take supplements almost as an excuse, right? For unhealthy diets, unhealthy lifestyle, whatever that may be. Um, can you help us understand, like, is that actually effective, or can it actually be a good substitute for certain things?
I think it can be, but overall, we want the all the benefits from food, right? Like if we're taking just the supplements because we don't eat fruits and vegetables, we're not getting fiber, we're not getting some of the antioxidants in there that are not going to be the same in supplements. Um, and I feel like it sometimes is a little bit of a cop out, like I'm just going to eat this crap and then I'm going to take my multivitamin and overall it's going to be fine.
Mm.
But it's easier to kind of slide into a more healthy lifestyle and really get most of these things from food and then
Mhm.
find out what, if anything, might be beneficial for you personally to supplement. Um, because it is easy to just like take a pill and pretend that everything's going to be fine.
So just
Mhm.
to avoid our problems, take a
Yeah, right.
supplement, hope for the best.
Who wants to eat a salad? I'll just have my multivitamin.
Oh my gosh. Okay,
God.
guilty. Um, okay, Laura, what are some of the biggest, or maybe even like most common myths that you hear from the clients that you work with? And I think part of it could just be like lack of education, but why do you feel like a lot of these myths continues to spread and happen? Is it just marketing problem, or what, like what is happening that is making us believe in these myths?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is marketing. Like, what do we see advertised to us? Like we talked about the influencer, I think it's really interesting in children and teens and what they're seeing. and then what they're picking up on at home too. So our
Mhm.
mom and dad obsessed with supplements, so then I need supplements. Or, I'm at baseball practice and this guy's taking this supplement and he's hitting home runs, so I should be taking that supplement. So kind of what's happening around. Um, and I think it's the desire to just be our best selves. And I always talked about like, oh, we're like yes people, like we're all busy. We all have all these things that we have going on and we want to perform our best. We want to feel our best. We want to put our best foot forward. And oh, would this help me get an edge up? Like, would this help me feel better? Would this
Mhm.
push me to the next level? I think people think about that too. A lot of people just sort of feel like, well, if I'm not taking anything to make me healthier, I'm not going to get healthier. And
Right.
so I think we feel like we need to do more sometimes.
Yeah. That I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think at least from my experience is heavily what I see on social media, on TV, and I think sometimes I also have this like fear of missing out, not in the sense of like, but it's just more of, oh my gosh, everybody's doing this. Am I
Yeah.
gonna have a deficiency because I'm not drinking my greens or doing all these things?
Yeah.
So I know for a fact I'm very much guilty of this. For folks who maybe are more obsessive over things like vitamin and all that, I feel like we hear a lot about like vitamin deficiency, and I think that creates this fear for people who might be taking a lot of different types of vitamins. Are there any risks that they should be aware of? I think earlier you mentioned maybe it sounds like some of the supplements our body is very good with dispelling if we are taking enough. My doctor at some point also said like if you take enough too much vitamin, you just pee it out. So it's like nothing to be really worried about. But what's your perspective on that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So all of the vitamins that are and minerals that are water soluble, you will just pee them out. That's why you have kidneys. They will, it's your kidneys and your liver are your own detox. We always talk about this when people are talking about their like wild detoxes that they do. We're like, that's actually why you have kidneys and a liver. They are your own detox all the time. But you will just pee out any extra vitamins. So most of them, it's not a huge concern that you're going to have toxic effects. There are fat soluble vitamins that you don't excrete in the same manner. So those get deposited in your adipose tissue. And if you take too much of those, you could end up with issues. So vitamins A, D, E, and K. Now, pretty much the only thing that people supplement of those that's common, I should say, is vitamin D. And it's really hard to get toxic on vitamin D. You have to take like mega, mega, mega doses. So
Mm.
that's not normally one that we see. That people would be excessive. But yeah, for the most part, it's just really expensive pee because you're spending a lot of money on
Right.
these supplements and you're just peeing them out.
Oh,
No.
yeah, no, that's great to know. Um, so Laura, you touched a little bit earlier on the importance of like the labels and reading the fine prints and how there's such a spectrum, right, of ingredients. Could you help us as the average Joe, like distinguish between a high quality supplement versus one that's really just following like a marketing hype? And are there certain things when we're in front of the Costco shelf, let's say, to like simple things that anyone could just look at in terms of on the labels?
Yeah, great question. So most of them, if they're third party verified, which that would be ideal because then you know what you're getting. You know, there's nothing hidden in there. You know that what is claimed to be in there is actually in there in the required amounts.
Mhm.
Um, that should be on the label. Or you could do a quick just Google search of like this brand, put in the exact name of the vitamin and see if it's third party verified. There are some brands where some of their products are, but not all. So it's not even like you can necessarily say, like, oh, yep, I've got this brand. I found it. They're third party verified. That's not necessarily true across all brand lines. I've found that out. Um, so that would be important to me if I'm going to put something in my body so I know for sure like what it is and that there's nothing else in there. And then just looking at
Hmm.
the other ingredients. So, something to think about for vitamins, just like medications, is they don't have to be labeled for allergens. That's like a optional thing. So, if you have an allergy or sensitivity, like if you have a gluten issue, if you have celiac disease, a lot of fillers in some vitamins might contain gluten. Some might
Mm,
contain milk protein or dairy. Some might have like coconut oil. So certain things that you just want to watch out for what those other ingredients are. And then just not so many other ingredients, because the less ingredients, the more you're getting just like the pure what you're trying to achieve with the supplement. So of course, if you're taking a multivitamin, it's going to have a ton of ingredients because there's a lot of vitamins in there, but not any like you want to limit the extra kind of ingredients.
Mhm.
and that is such a great takeaway. I'm gonna keep that in mind. Like just like the less is more, right? And
Yeah.
really looking out for the simpler, the better, the more natural. Um, super helpful. And so for me, as I think about why do I take supplements, like one of the reasons why I started taking some of this was because I had like low energy. And so I think that's maybe like a common issue, right? Like why people would turn to supplements. And many supplements do claim that they boost energy and they boost your immune system and just increase the level of energy. So could you also help us debunk or support, like what is, in your opinion, is that really true, or is there something deeper going on we need to pay
Yeah.
attention to?
I think if you have a true deficiency in a vitamin and you get back to normal levels, you would probably see a change in energy for a lot of vitamins that you might be deficient in. Because as we talked through, like some of the vitamins specifically, like a lot of them were related to mood or energy. So I think there is a lot to be said about making sure you're not deficient. If you are not deficient though, excess might not help that. Like more is not always better. Um,
Mhm.
and so other things to think about, like man, low energy is like the problem of so many of us, right? Like there's I was like, "Oh, I'm so tired today." But I was like, "Oh, did I drink enough water today? Absolutely not." Like,
Uh,
okay, I should probably drink enough water. I should probably like maybe choose a better food choice that's actually going to like sustain me in between meals. Like making sure I'm having something with protein and with fruits and vegetables, so I have fiber, so I'm like not hitting that afternoon slump where I just want a cookie. And then getting regular physical activity too, which it's hard if you're tired to be like, "Oh, I should go do physical activity because in the end that'll make me feel less tired," but it's true. Um,
mm,
you know, not often and you're like, "Oh, I should just like go for a short walk," and then come back and you're like, "Oh, I'm so tired now." Like usually you get a little bit more energy because you got up and got moving and went outside
Mhm.
or went on the treadmill or whatever it is. So I think, sometimes going back to the basics of just like low energy, like, are you drinking enough water? What kind of food are you putting in your body and are you moving your body? All things that I typically when I'm feeling really low energy, and then of course sleep. But other things that you maybe it's harder to carve out more hours of the day to sleep. So the other things that you can kind of do during that time.
it could be so simple.
Right.
Right. But yeah,
Easier
I do
said
feel
than
more
done.
energy after workout. It's weird,
Yeah.
right? It's like I don't want to go to the workout, but then when I do go, I feel more energy. It's just getting there.
I
Yeah.
I mentioned it's easier said than done because I remember asking the exact same question to my doctor. I was like, "Oh, I feel so exhausted every day." And he was like, "Oh, I think you should sleep more, eat healthy, and like work out." And I go, "Cool. Thank you." Like,
Yep.
what do I say? I know too, okay? So we're all trying our best, but 100%, like that's like the easiest, not easiest, but like the most natural way to find that balance for yourself. But
Mhm.
easier said than done. Anyways,
Uh-huh.
Laura, I know we're starting to come to the end of our podcast. Before we go, you gave us so many like good nuggets of information around testing supplements and how to like keep our body balanced. Um, if there is one takeaway or one homework for our audience to do after they listen to this episode, what would it be?
Great question. I think getting back to, like you said, the basics of just we talked about being busy and you have to do a little bit of preparation and planning in order to eat well when you're busy. So think about how you want to achieve those goals of getting your nutrients in. And it does take a little bit of planning. So when is that time? When are you going to dedicate the time to plan? I mean, like most of us, just order your groceries to be delivered or figure out when you're going to go to the grocery store or
Mhm.
what you need to do to kind of set yourself up for success. I think it's when we've all probably noticed, like if we are on eating well, we feel probably significantly better than when we're not doing that. And so like I will do as much meal prep as I can on the weekend. And just
Mm.
even like I have a big Tupperware bin and it's full of like fresh vegetables and when my kids are like hungry before dinner, I put that out. It's like, don't eat the crap in the pantry right now. Like you can eat these
Mhm.
and they will. And by the next weekend, I have to like clean more vegetables and refill it. But just thinking about what options how can you set yourself up for success by just doing some of those things. And then that it's really individualized. So maybe Jane does need magnesium, and maybe that's going to optimize, her health. And maybe I need to remember to take my vitamin D this winter, and maybe I'll feel a little bit better, have a little bit more energy. But I think just knowing that everything is pretty individual and sure, try something, but maybe give it a time limit too. Like, I'm going to try this for a month. And if I don't see any difference, then I'm probably going to stop taking it. So
Mhm.
thinking about some of those things too, of just like setting little goals for yourself. It can be really overwhelming to like try to overhaul everything in your life. So picking something that's a little bit achievable and taking a step in. So think about planning your meals and set yourself up for success to have things on hand that maybe then you can avoid taking some of those supplements.
Yeah. It's so
Mhm.
interesting because anytime we interact with this like nutritionist or specialist, it always comes back to eating the right food. Like at the end of the day, that is enough and plenty to sustain your body and your life. And yeah, it's just fascinating to hear that ultimately a lot of these conversations still kind of come back to the same source. But thank you so much. This is so amazing. Laura, as we
Mhm.
close, if our listeners want to ask more questions or if they want to work with you, what's the best way for people to find you or where can people find you?
You can definitely reach out on LinkedIn. I try to network there as much as possible. So they can reach out there and we'll connect.
And are you limited to only work with certain clients in certain regions or are there limitations?
Yeah, so that's a great question. With state limitations, yeah, we can only, licensure requires only working with people in the state of Minnesota, but I certainly have a network across the country of people. I might be able to help you find someone else.
Amazing.
Awesome.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And for our listeners that are listening to this episode, we, as always, want to hear from you as well. So email us and let us know what supplements you're eating because we always want to know and we always want to be influenced into new supplements. But also what your experience has been. Are you a frequent supplement taker? Are you just getting into it or are you not at all educated about it? This is the first time that you're getting into it. We would love to hear from you. So email us at whereisthelinepod@gmail.com. And as always, you can subscribe to us wherever you're listening to us. We are on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. Thank you all again for joining us in this episode, and we will see you in the next one.